It was the early morning of April 17, 2023. A strange fire broke out in the middle of the desert in western Arizona, right off Interstate 10. A passing driver called 911.
I was trying to report a car fire. He's off on the side of I-10.
And there appears to be a dead person in the vehicle.
His panicked voice echoed in the recording of the operator, mixed with the wind and the eerie silence of the desert at dawn. The car burned out in the desert, leaving behind chilling questions. Who was in there? And what really happened? The girl was Mercedes Vega, 22 years old, a passionate dancer building a career in Phoenix. She had left home the night before, planning to go to work as usual. Mercedes left home as usual. No one could have guessed that the journey would lead to tragedy. In 24 hours, the case went from a missing person with no trace to one of Arizona's most shocking murders in recent years, because the victim was not only murdered, but also had detergent poured down her throat, shot, and finally burned alive. What happened to Mercedes Vega that fateful night? Who could have done such a cruel thing to a young girl who had no enemies? And why did it take the police more than half a year to catch the suspect? Let's retrace the entire Mercedes Vega case, from the first clue to the journey to find the heartbreaking truth behind the early morning fire. On the evening of April 16, 2023, Mercedes Vega left her apartment in Tempe, Arizona. As usual, she was dressed casually, carrying her purse and phone, preparing to drive to work. Data from the security camera in the apartment building's parking lot showed her stepping out of the elevator at around 10:30 p.m. There was no sign of panic. No one was with her. However, a few minutes later, the image recorded an unexpected situation. Mercedes was pulled into a black sedan, not the car she usually used. That car was later identified as an old Chevy Malibu, not registered in her name, a salvage title, had been in an accident and bought back. From that point on, Mercedes' phone went dead. She did not go to work, did not text anyone, and did not return to the apartment. To family and friends, it was completely out of the ordinary. But before they could call the police the next morning, local television news reported a car fire on Interstate 10. According to GPS data, the car left Tempe just after 11 p.m., passing through downtown Phoenix, heading west on sparsely traveled roads. The 50-mile journey ended near Tonopah, a largely forgotten stretch of road that was unattended and unlit. There, around 4 a.m., passers-by spotted flames rising from the side of the freeway. When firefighters extinguished the fire, Mercedes' body was found in the passenger seat. Despite the severe damage, police were able to find the first clues to an identity. Over the next several days, detectives combed through hundreds of hours of camera footage from Tempe to Tonopah, tracked cell phone signals, and especially checked the records of the Chevy Malibu, which had been purchased online and did not have a valid license plate. They asked, if Mercedes was not driving the car, who was? And why was she on that deserted stretch of road? There were no direct witnesses, but the electronic logs and visual trail painted an initial picture. A young woman being taken away in the night, leaving a bustling city, then disappearing into the desert. A simple journey became the beginning of a shocking case. Before the first light of day had even touched the Arizona desert, a driver on Interstate 10 came across an unusual sight. In the flash of his headlights, he saw a small fire ahead on the side of the road, and in a split second, the flames erupted into a large column of smoke. He stopped, grabbed his phone, and called 911. "There's a car on fire from the inside. I think someone's in there," the man's voice on the 911 recording says, trembling and urgent. Maricopa County firefighters and sheriff's deputies were dispatched to the scene in less than 20 minutes. They reached the car under extremely harsh conditions. The fire had destroyed much of the exterior structure, and the interior was nearly charred. In the passenger seat, however, firefighters found a form, not intact, but clearly human. Police quickly cordoned off the entire area around the scene. A 500-meter stretch of road was cordoned off for investigation. Forensic technicians began working amid the smoldering sand and smoke. No paperwork, no license plate, no electronic devices had survived the fire. All physical clues had been severely damaged by the devastating heat. Meanwhile, information about the car fire was scattered on the local morning news. Mercedes Vega's family, seeing the news and not having been able to reach her since the night before, began to worry. They called the police, reporting that she had not come home, had not shown up for work, and that her phone had been disconnected. From there, two clues, a mysterious disappearance in Tempe and an unidentified body on the E10 freeway, began to come together. In a brief press conference later that afternoon, police confirmed that they were working with other departments to identify the victim. A pair of silver earrings and hair left after the fire were the first key details leading to the identity of the girl in the car. Shortly after the official announcement was made, the body in the car was Mercedes Vega, 22 years old. The name immediately covered all media platforms in Arizona. Questions followed. How did she get there? Why that car? Who was the last person to see her? And most importantly, what really happened the night Mercedes disappeared? The fire scene, though cold, still retained key details. The car was completely burned, with the metal frame warping, the dashboard melting, and the seats reduced to a gray, charred steel frame. Forensic technicians did find a few clues, though. A pair of burned earrings, a strange puncture in the back seat, and a lingering odor, not just of gasoline, but of industrial cleaners. Mercedes's body was taken to the Maricopa County Nuclear Laboratory. The forensic report revealed several abnormalities. There was a non-fatal gunshot wound to her arm. There were signs of a severe blow to her head, causing a blood clot. And especially in her throat, experts discovered residue from a cleaning chemical commonly used to remove DNA. The autopsy also made a shocking discovery. Mercedes was still alive when the car was set on fire. The official cause of death was smoke inhalation. That made the trauma of the incident all the more devastating, not only because she had been harmed, but because her final hours were spent in utter terror. All of this evidence, combined with the fact that the car was not in her name and had no license plate, further shifted the case from an accident to a planned and orchestrated act. With the medical examiner's conclusion that the victim died under suspicious circumstances and with signs of premeditated cruelty, the case was immediately turned into a full-blown criminal investigation. Detectives from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department began deciphering every layer of information left behind from the scene, whether it was ash, metal fragments, or small details in the traffic system. The first clue came from a security camera at the apartment complex where Mercedes lived. When investigators reviewed the video from the night of the incident, they saw her exit the elevator and enter the garage. A few minutes later, the footage showed her being yanked into a vehicle, a black Chevy Malibu. The car had never been seen in the parking lot before. The absence of a license plate made tracking more difficult, but it did not deter investigators. Using location data, they reconstructed the car's route from Tempe to Tonopah. Every traffic camera, gas station along the way, even doorbell cameras in nearby neighborhoods were checked. A grainy, seconds-long clip showed the Chevy Malibu stopping near a gas station a few miles from the scene, and at that moment, a young man in a hoodie briefly appeared next to the car. The key to the case was the car. After weeks of searching, the team discovered that the Malibu was a salvage title, had been in an accident, and had been sold on a classified site. The buyer's name was unclear, but the transaction had taken place months earlier in Tennessee. By tracking electronic transactions related to the car, investigators found a name: Sincere Patrick Hayes, 22. The story began to unravel for Hayes. He lived in Tennessee, had a minor history of petty theft, but no serious criminal convictions. Hayes and Mercedes were complete strangers. No interactions in digital or real-life records. This made the police even more suspicious. This could have been a completely random attack without any personal motive. An opportunistic kidnapping, where the perpetrator struck when he saw a woman alone in an empty garage. Digital data such as phone location, IP access to network accounts, and movement data from a map app solidified the suspect's profile. Arizona police coordinated with authorities in Tennessee, and after nearly 7 months of quiet investigation, they arrested Hayes on November 11, 2024. At the time of his arrest, Hayes was living with relatives in Nashville. He did not resist, but did not give a clear statement. During his first interview after being extradited to Arizona, Hayes repeatedly claimed that he did not know anyone named Mercedes Vega and that he had never been to Arizona. However, investigators were well prepared. They presented gas station video, facial recognition images, phone location data, and evidence of the car purchase. In the face of increasingly clear evidence, Hayes remained silent and refused to testify further. There was no confession, but the case was strong enough to warrant a conviction. The Maricopa County District Attorney's Office formally charged Hayes with first-degree murder, kidnapping, armed robbery, illegal possession of a vehicle, and destruction of evidence. The indictment also highlighted particularly serious elements: the act of dousing the victim with chemicals, shooting to stop her from resisting, and burning her car while she was still alive. Mercedes' family was notified of the arrest through a phone call from the police. Her mother, Erica, choked up and said, "We have waited too long. Nothing can bring her back, but at least the truth is gradually coming to light." Local and national media immediately reported the news. The case, which had already caused outrage, was now in turmoil because of the fact that the perpetrator was a complete stranger, and the investigation lasted nearly a year. The public was asking, who else was involved? Did Hayes act alone, or was she part of a larger crime chain? The police did not rule out the possibility of other suspects. They said the investigation was still ongoing, and all new data was being analyzed. Meanwhile, the case file was completed in preparation for the trial. A case that seemed to have fallen into a dead end in the desert has begun to reveal its dark corners. But with the victim gone forever, the question is not only who did it, but also why did it happen, and how to avoid a second Mercedes Vega in the future. On July 31, 2025, the trial of Sincere Patrick Hayes officially opened in Maricopa County Superior Court, Arizona. Nearly 2 years after the night Mercedes Vega disappeared, her family finally came face to face with the man accused of that terrible tragedy. Hayes appeared in prison clothes, keeping a stoic and emotionless face. In court, he continued to assert his innocence. Defense attorneys argued that their client had no clear connection to the victim, no personal motive, and that all the evidence was circumstantial. That the fact that the car had been owned by Hayes did not mean he was the one who committed the crime. However, the prosecution had prepared carefully. They detailed the chain of evidence: the car's journey from Tempe to where the body was found, the matching phone records, the blurry gas station camera footage, the car purchase, and the forensic results of the remains left in the burned car. Without a confession, they painted a convincing scenario in which the defendant was the only one with the opportunity, means, and time to commit the act. The climax of the trial came when forensic experts described the victim's final moments. She was still breathing when the fire broke out. Those words brought silence to the courtroom. Some in the audience burst into tears, including those who had never known Mercedes. The victim's family was allowed to speak. Her mother, Erica, choked up in court. She was just starting her life, and someone, out of hatred, out of conflict, so cruelly extinguished that light. The prosecutor's office said it was seeking the maximum sentence, the death penalty, on the grounds that the case was cruel and unjustifiable. "We are not simply seeking punishment," the prosecutor said. "We are seeking justice for a girl who suffered something no one should have to endure." A final verdict was not announced at this preliminary hearing. The court said it needed more time to consider the appropriate punishment. However, the jury's conclusion was clear. Sincere Hayes was guilty of first-degree murder and all other related charges. The Mercedes Vega case ended with a verdict for the suspect, but the pain could not be closed for those left behind. Her family lost a child, a sister, a girlfriend who always brought laughter and hope. They no longer had the opportunity to celebrate birthdays, no longer had late-night phone calls, no longer had anyone entering the house with a bright smile like before. That loss did not belong to just one family. It belonged to the whole community, where a young girl could have lived her life to the fullest. This case not only left regret, but also a wake-up call for all of us. In a modern society with developed technology, we easily feel safe. But the Mercedes case shows that just a moment of carelessness, a familiar space like a parking lot or a short road, can also turn into a place of fate. Personal vigilance, the application of self-protection technology, and mutual care in the community now become necessary requirements, not options. The law can punish the wicked, but only vigilance and humanity in life can help prevent the tragedy from repeating itself. What about you? What did you learn from the Mercedes Vega case? Leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue following other real cases, where each story is not only about crime, but also a lesson for life.